Good morning, esteemed representatives from the Ministry of Health. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present today. As a group, we would like to bring up the issues of childhood obesity in Singapore and why it requires our attention and action today. Here is our table of contents for our presentation. How has childhood obesity developed over time? So, childhood obesity has become a growing concern for Singapore over the years. From a survey conducted in 2017, 13% of children aged 6 to 13 in mainstream schools were found to be overweight. By 2019, the situation became worrying as 17.4% of male and 13% of female P5 students had a BMI above the 90th percentile, compared to 1976, where the obesity rate was less than 3%. This highlights a significant change over time and signals the urgency to act. This rise is alarming because obesity at a young age increases the risk of developing health complications such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease at an earlier age. To better understand how childhood obesity arises, we look at the key influences on children's eating behaviors and lifestyle choices, which are the home and school environment. Parental knowledge, attitudes, and practices towards health play a crucial role in shaping a child's weight management. Since parents often set the foundation for eating habits at home, their beliefs and understanding about nutrition directly influence what and how their children eat. Additionally, the food environment significantly affects dietary choices. One key setting is the school, where children spend most of their time. School food options, vending machines, and peer influence can all shape eating patterns, making it either easier or harder for children to maintain a healthy weight. This brings us to our problem statement. The increasing prevalence of childhood obesity, children aged 7 to 13 in Singapore, is caused by poor dietary choices, largely influenced by their home and school environment. Through our presentation, we will explore the key factors contributing to this problem and discuss potential strategies to address it effectively. Now I'll pass the time on to Natalie.
Thank you, Caitlin. We will now address the SIF on the home environment. Firstly, regarding historical cultural beliefs, in the past, being overweight was viewed positively as it meant that one's family is affluent rather than a sign of unhealthy eating habits. A Singapore study in 2016 has shown that 30% of Singaporean mothers underestimate and overestimate their children's weight verbally and visually. This meant that children who were overweight were seen as lighter or normal in their mother's perspective, whereas children who were underweight were seen as heavier than their actual weight. This is especially evident in the Chinese culture, where older generations believe that chubby children are healthy. Parents who still follow this cultural belief may unintentionally influence children's eating habits with the consumption of unhealthy and big portions of food, as well as influencing their perception of weight, resulting in the increase of obesity rates in Singapore. Since eating habits are built from young, if this issue is left unaddressed, it can significantly impact the prevalence of childhood obesity. I will now pass the time to Zui.
Thank you, Nancy. So another causal factor for childhood obesity is the parental influence on the child's diet. According to a study done in 2018, it shows that parents actually have limited understanding and knowledge of these aspects: healthy eating, portion sizes, physical activity recommendation, obesity trends, and health risks. These factors greatly affect a child's diet and risk of being obese. In addition, children will tend to mirror their parental dietary habits and food preferences, meaning that whatever the parents consume, the children will consume as well. If the parents has poor eating habits, they will be adopted by their child. Congruently, parents who are overweight and possess unhealthy eating habits have an increased risk of raising children to become overweight as well. Therefore, the parental influence on a child's diet is caused by a high tendency to overfeed their child, and the child having no autonomy over what food is served at home, as well as eventually adopting their eating habits from their parents, ultimately leading to unhealthy eating habits that are established at home. These will influence the food choices and eating habits a child makes from early childhood into the future. To conclude, these are the linking factors of how a child's home causes the rising rates of childhood obesity. Firstly, the culture of having a plump body shows affluence and good health, which are what some families sought after in the past. Secondly, food preferences and dietary habits of parents are naturally adopted by their children. So, if they have poor dietary habits, these will also be adopted. Lastly, The lack of education and awareness of what constitutes a healthy diet for a child all waters down to families encouraging overeating without knowledge of the negative health consequences it might have on the child, and in addition to a child having no say in the food provided to them, all lead to the rising rates of childhood obesity in Singapore. Now I'll pass the time to Inshira.
Thank you, Tui. Now we'll be moving on to the SIF framework for schools. Historically, the sale and promotion of unhealthy food in schools have played a central role in shaping children's eating habits, contributing to poor dietary habits among students. Many school canteens sold deep fried food and sugary drinks to its students. Furthermore, the introduction of health promotion programs in schools, such as Model School Tuck Shop Program, MSTP, by the Health Promotion Board, HPB, supports this as it was introduced to combat obesity among students by addressing the sale of unhealthy foods in school tuck shops. However, even with the implementation of MSTP, some tuck shops were still allowed to sell fried snacks up to once a week. It was also a voluntary program, hence not all schools participated. As a result, though students may have consumed more fruits and vegetables, exposure to less healthy food options and its consumption still continued. This highlights how early health promotion programs were not entirely successful in changing long-established unhealthy eating habits. Hence, this shows how the historical prevalence of unhealthy food sales in schools may have played a significant role in shaping students' poor dietary habits. This later on contributed to childhood obesity as they continued to consume fried food and sugary drinks. Now I'll pass the time to Joel.
Thank you, Inshira. Now I'll be talking about the structural factor of the school environment causing food substitution in canteens. Structural economic factors such as rising costs leads to declining canteen vendors, which influences the school food environment and type of food offered to students. Even though rentals for school canteen stalls are heavily subsidized, falling revenues and increased uncertainty over demand are driving operators away, especially given the accelerated increase in the cost of living in Singapore over the past 3 years. Currently, around 40 schools are looking for operators, with a handful missing more than one stall. Store owners saying the costs are struggling with rising costs and getting on in years. With struggles to manage rising costs, it is likely for existing store operators to substitute to cheaper, processed options to cut down on costs in order to sustain. The decline in vendors have prompted a shift towards vending machines or food delivery services as quick fixes to feed hungry student populations. The majority of vending machines still dispenses pre-packaged, ultra-processed foods high in preservatives, sugar, and salt that run counter to the goals of the Healthy Meals in School program that was implemented by the government. It normalizes poor dietary choices, influencing the increased unhealthy food consumption consisting of excess calories and sugar among students, which increases their vulnerability to childhood obesity. This reflects how structural economic factors, such as rising costs, lead to a shift in the school food environment where unhealthy options dominate and are readily available and accessible to children. Furthermore, common practices in schools, such as teachers rewarding students with sweets and snacks, contradicts the school's promotion of healthy eating and portrays unhealthy food as an item of desire. I will now pass the time to Nurin.
Thank you, Joelle. In school, the food sharing culture plays a big role in shaping children's eating habits. According to Chan et al. In 2022, which is a Singaporean qualitative study which used focus group discussions, the researchers found that children reported being influenced by what their friends bought or shared during recess, such as fried snacks and sugary drinks. For example, when one child buys a packet of chips, others are likely to join in and buy the same thing. And if their friends share food with them, they might start to buy it for themselves the next time. This turns into a group activity rather than an individual choice. Similarly, Ajelian et al. In 2020 found that peer influence is often negative, as children who can make their own food choices independently still tend to follow what their friends eat, rather than choosing what they know is good for them. Hence, they are more susceptible to selecting snacks and sugary drinks. Because of this, unhealthy foods become more appealing in group settings, such as in school. Over time, this normalizes poor eating habits and the selection of unhealthy choices, leading to habitual consumption of snacks high in sugar and saturated fats. As we can see, the factors are interconnected. Historically, the frequent availability and consumption of fried snacks and sugary drinks have shaped poor dietary habits over time. Structurally, economic pressures have caused school canteens to stock cheaper, less healthy foods to stay sustainable. This then overlaps culturally, where food sharing comes into play, reinforcing the idea that unhealthy foods are enjoyable and socially acceptable. Together, these influences create a cycle of unhealthy eating habits and excess calorie intake over time, which ultimately contributes to rising childhood obesity rates in Singapore, which we find concerning. Now I'll pass my time to Ferlinda.
Thank you, Noreen. I will now talk about the impacts homes and schools have on children in relation to childhood obesity. So to briefly summarize the points made earlier, the environment children are mostly present at, namely their homes and schools, have great significance in shaping a child's eating habits. First off, the culture in certain homes, more specifically some Chinese ones, influence the perception towards overweight children by enforcing the idea that being overweight is equivalent to being healthy. Next, children tend to mirror their parents, which is applicable to their eating habits too. This suggests that if parents do not serve as an example and choose not to maintain a healthy diet, children would follow these actions, leading to obesity arising from unhealthy eating habits at a young age. Subsequently, the sale of fried and processed foods in school canteens, coupled with the availability of unhealthy food from vending machines due to the lack of stall vendors and peer influence, largely influence their diet and unhealthy food consumption, contributing to obesity. These points are significant because these are the two places children spend most of their time at, and the environment and people present at these places shape children's ideas of food consumption. If children are negatively influenced, they could develop unhealthy eating habits that follow them till adulthood. This means that not only would they raise childhood obesity, but also serious health problems later in life. We have come up with some recommendations for this problem in line with parents' concerns. Firstly, for homes, our idea was inspired by Kidstar, a program for children to cultivate healthy eating habits. Our first recommendation is to utilize parent support groups, or PSG, to encourage attendance to HPB events. By attending these events, parents can gain more knowledge as well as spread relevant and current information on healthy eating and child obesity. To add on, we have come up with the idea to collaborate with the HPB to conduct interactive workshops to educate families on healthy eating habits. At these workshops, they will be able to prepare healthy meals as a family and live with a simple recipe book to refer to at home should they require more healthy food recommendations. Finally, conducting games could be an engaging method to get children to learn about healthy eating habits. These recommendations will be feasible due to the strong culture of learning in Singapore and family-friendly nature of the activities. Now, moving on to the recommendations for school. Our idea was inspired by the tray lunch systems in Korea. Our recommendation is to have healthy buffet-style meals in school canteens handed out by staff with labels specified in front of each dish and use My Healthy Plate as a guide. The labels are especially important because Singapore is multiracial and multicultural. Hence, it is important that labels are put in place so that students with dietary restrictions are aware which dish they should avoid. Additionally, it could get children to try out a variety of foods instead of being confined to one option, such as those in bento meals. Furthermore, this system helps to control food portions, allowing children to eat appropriate amounts while consuming healthier food, which reduces the risk of developing obesity. This recommendation is feasible because it is cost-effective, efficient, and saves on the number of staff required. Now, Caitlin will conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Belinda. In conclusion, both home and school environments play a significant role in shaping children's eating habits. In home, the cultural beliefs may encourage overeating, and parents' lack of knowledge about healthy eating can influence their children's long-term dietary behaviors. Similarly, the school environment contributes to the problem through the availability of unhealthy food options in stores and vending machines, as well as peer influence that encourages the purchase of unhealthy snacks. Together, these factors create conditions that increase the risk of childhood obesity. For recommendations, starting with the whole environment, we suggest utilizing the parent support groups as a platform to share information on healthy eating habits with other parents. Additionally, PSGs can encourage greater parental participation in HPB initiatives and collaborate with HPB to organize interactive workshops for both parents and children. For the school environment, we propose implementing buffet-style meal systems. This encourages the students to practice portion control, which can promote healthier eating behaviors over time. Thank you for your time and attention. We look forward to collaborating with you to strengthen efforts in tackling childhood obesity in Singapore. Here are our references.